Joseph Kinville III. He was born in South Florida, and this mystery has been unsolved for 23 years, which is just so sad. At midnight on Monday, March 1st of 1999, single mother Kathy wakes up with a bad feeling. She was staying in a friend's trailer in Arcadia, Florida, and she had come to town with her 2 teenage sons, as she usually did on the weekends. But she figured it was nothing and just went back to sleep. She woke up at 8 a.m. and began to gather her sons to leave. However, her 16-year-old son, Joseph, was nowhere to be found. Her son, 14-year-old Justin, though, was there and ready to go. So she looks for Joseph around the house and then around the neighborhood, but cannot find anything. She thinks it's weird, but she doesn't worry too much about it because they had been living in Arcadia before. They had just moved somewhere else and visited Arcadia on the weekends. And so, therefore, Justin and Joseph, her 2 sons, had friends and other relatives that lived around in Arcadia. So she just assumed that Joseph had gone off to a friend's house or something and overslept, so she tries not to worry too much. And after more time passed, she became increasingly worried because the boys were responsible. They were a very tight-knit family, and the boys both had jobs and had a good understanding of the concept of time, so just very responsible. So she thought it was very strange. When it became mid-morning, so about noon on that day, and he still had not shown up, she made a call to the sheriff's office to report him missing. She ended up suggesting that he may have just overslept or ran off with some friends for the day, so the sheriff didn't really think much about it, unfortunately, and there were no other weird reports in the area, like no reports of any accident or car crash, anything like that, so they dismissed it. Justin says the last time he heard from him was around 11 p.m. the previous night, and he was at a friend's house in a neighborhood about 2 miles from where they were staying. He heard him talking about going to his ex-girlfriend's house that night and then to a house party. He had also heard that Joseph got into a confrontation with some boys, but left before anything serious could happen. His mother, Kathy, begins to call around. She is calling friends and family in the area, but they all agreed that nobody had heard from Joseph after 11 p.m. So, later, a man was walking in a field near an auto shop that he worked at, and he spotted a young man laying in the grass with his hands up in the air. And he says that it was obvious right away that this young man was deceased. He ran back into his office and had someone call 911. Minutes later, the sheriffs and detectives had arrived. We don't have many of the police reports from this, but we do know that law enforcement came from about 2 hours hours west of Arcadia, so it seemed like they were taking it pretty seriously and wanted answers. No wallet or ID was found on him or near him, but they estimated him to be about 16 years old. He was fully clothed and still wearing jewelry. There was serious blood loss from his chest and abdomen. A clear slash in the fabric near his stomach was very bloody. He had scratches. They were described as like cut/scratches around his arms, and they decided he had been attacked from the front due to the blood spatter pattern. They said he laid on his back after he was attacked, and the authorities said, quote, "We have not found the weapon and have not determined the exact killing location," end quote. It's important to note that this auto shop and field was located right off of a busy area next to Highway 16. There were many businesses along this highway, and it was a well-trafficked area. The field where Joseph was found was often used as a shortcut or a teenager hangout destination. Beer bottles were found in the field, and law enforcement says that someone had to have seen something. Joseph is then transported to his autopsy. Now, I had never heard of this next part, but deputies took a Polaroid photo of Joseph's body and showed it around to the public to try and identify him. A group of girls tell the deputy that the body is 16-year-old Joseph Kinville III's. One of the girls had happened to be his ex-girlfriend. So police, after confirming this, go to his home, who deliver the news to his family. Kathy says she started screaming and wonders what his last moments were like, which is just so sad. On 10:30 a.m. on Tuesday, March 2nd, the day after he was found, the autopsy was done. Joseph was stabbed once in the chest with a small object. The stab wound was 2 centimeters wide through the front of his sweatshirt and chest. However, the object is unidentified. No weapon was found at the scene, and when the blade made contact, it went 4.5 inches above his belly button, straight into his heart. And they said that he probably bled out for several minutes. And rigor mortis showed that the blood had pooled and settled in his back. So they think that after he'd been attacked, he'd lay down on his back, and remember, he was found with his hands in the air. So they think that this is the position that he ultimately bled out and died in. The ME did not find any defensive wounds, which they think is very odd, which means he was attacked very quickly or was restrained in some way. Unfortunately, Joseph bit his nails a lot, so no DNA evidence could be found under his fingernails. Blood work showed that he had a blood alcohol content of 0.14, which, if you don't know, the legal limit in most of the states is 0.08, so this is very high. And they suggested that this means he most likely was having trouble 5'7" and 140 pounds. So it all depends on tolerance. We really don't know, but that is very high, so it's possible that he could have been caught off guard. And that would explain not having defensive wounds. A drug screen also showed that he had marijuana in his system, and his stomach contents showed only yellow fluid, so he did not have any undigested food in his system. The last thing worth noting right now is the time of death. They said it was between 7 p.m. on February 28th and 7 a.m. on March 1st. But remember, his brother had last talked to Joseph at 11 p.m., so really they are looking to find out what happened between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. And detectives noted that Joseph had broken up with his ex-girlfriend Melinda about 2 weeks prior to his death, and he had reportedly visited her before he went to the party. We had said before that he supposedly got into a fight, and this fight was rumored to be with another guy Melinda was seeing who showed up to the party. But when Melinda was questioned, she had a different story. She claims that she was not at the house party, and neither was her new boyfriend. She claims there was no altercation, and at no point did her boyfriend leave her side. But in 1999, investigators who were just inside of the story decided to keep digging. They looked into Melinda and her new boyfriend a lot more. Documents from her statement say Joseph did stop by her house the Sunday before his death, asking her to get back together with him, but she told him no. She said his reaction was, quote, "If I get a gun, will you shoot me?" End quote. He had apparently taken the breakup very hard and was considering harming himself. He was heard saying, quote, "I ought to be dead," end quote. But no evidence at the crime scene points to him taking his own life. While being interviewed several years after his death, Melinda backtracks and said that he did not talk about harming himself and that his confidence was very high. She did say she genuinely wants to know what happened to him and hates that people assume she and her boyfriend had something to do with it. Detectives went to his funeral to just kind of people watch, but they did not find anything worth noting. In the days after his murder, the case went cold and disappeared from the papers. However, rumors were on fire around the small town. People were saying Joseph was involved with drugs and got caught up at the wrong crowd. His mother, Kathy, though, said that he only smoked marijuana and it's not possible that he was doing anything harder. She said he was a respectable boy and a hard worker who did his best to help his mom deal with being a single mom, so he contributed to the bills and their life. He had dropped out of high school, but he had been talking about how he wanted to go back, which further debunks Joseph witnessed a violent crime months before his death. So this opens up a new door of possibilities. He had witnessed a stabbing in his mom's trailer in Arcadia in September of '98 when he was hanging out around 7 p.m. outside of his mom's trailer. Inside was Joseph's uncle and another man, Edward. When Joseph came inside to get a cigarette, he hears his uncle screaming and he sees Edward run past him saying, quote, "I just stabbed someone." Joseph finds his uncle on the kitchen floor covered in blood, and in the sink is a bloody knife. Joseph calls the police, and he was the one to tell the police everything because his uncle was in critical condition. Edward ended up taking a plea deal and was in prison during Joseph's murder, so he was ultimately ruled out. Now, let's talk about something incredibly strange that happened following Joseph Kinville III's death. This part just blew my mind, so whether it is a coincidence or not, you decide. So, far away in Michigan was Joseph's estranged father, Joseph Sr. So, Joseph's dad, Joseph Sr., was murdered on June 27th of 1999, the same year Joseph Jr., his son, was murdered. It was exactly 4 months after his son's murder, and like I said, he was in Michigan, so very far away from Florida. Police say that early morning around 5 a.m., 38-year-old Joe Sr. is hanging out with his friends and they're drinking, partying, just having fun. Now, supposedly, Joseph Sr. owed money to a drug dealer who went by the name of Cole. As a way to pay off his debts to Cole, he had gotten used to trading stuff like tools, car parts, stuff like that. And this day, Joe and one of his friends walked to Cole's house with stuff in their hands to trade. His friend Robert was with him and returns to the house and tells their friend Stephen that Cole shot Joseph in the back of the head a couple of times as soon as they walked into his yard. Now, they don't call the police. Instead, the friend Stephen walks to Cole's house and sees that it's true. Joe Sr. is laying face down in the yard, deceased. And Stephen actually helps dispose of Joe Sr.'s body. It was him and Cole that got rid of the body. Now Robert was back in the other house freaking out, and he called the police. How strange is that? Alright, let's keep going. So, Cole is then identified as James Washington III. This was his real name, and he was only 17 years old. His trial was in January of 2000, and there was an airtight case against Washington, so the jury does find him guilty. he's sentenced to life in prison without parole. But later a law was passed that made minors eligible for parole, and his sentence was changed. However, he is still in prison to this day. He claims that he only shot Joseph Sr. because he was scared that his bosses would come for him because he owed them money. He said that he never had anything to do with Joseph Jr.'s murder, and said that he did not even know Joseph Sr. was a father. So, do you think it could have been connected? That is just so very strange and tragic. Now, let's talk about some other things that happened, like some theories. There was another lead in Joseph Jr.'s case, so Kathy's son. Kathy receives a mysterious letter 1 year after her son was murdered. It was in the late 2000s, and she checks her mail and finds a letter that she does not recognize. The letter caught her off guard because it came from a prison, like the return address was from a prison. And she got a really bad feeling, so she made her daughter-in-law read it. It detailed everything that happened to her son, Joe Jr., on the night that he died, including how, when, and where the murder happened. And the letter suggested that multiple people were involved and were witnesses the moment that Joseph Jr. was killed. He claims, or this letter claims, that the boys chased him and then jumped him. The letter was given to the sheriff's office, but they told her they did some digging on who wrote it, but they deemed it uncredible because the writer of the letter was in jail when Joseph was killed. So that is very odd. I don't think that necessarily means anything. You know, if he was in jail, he could have easily talked to someone that was involved. So that's just so terrible that nothing came from it. So really, this case has been 23 years of rumors. Kathy says that she wants answers, and I'm going to share a quote from her. She said, quote, "I don't think people that were involved in it should be out and about, and I don't know how they can live knowing what they did. I wish they would come up and say that they did it, why they did it. Give me some closure. It's been too long." End quote. How heartbreaking is this case? The last thing I have to say about it is that Joseph's brother got involved with some bad stuff after this occurred, and he has a criminal record of his own now. Kathy says that after Joe Jr., her son's death, she became distant and numb and blames herself for what happened to both of her sons. And that is the end of the case. What do you think happened? guess we really have no way of knowing. I think there is someone out there who knows something, though. Like, this was 2000, early, the murder happened 1999, and the investigation really was in the 2000s and after. So, 25 about years old now. I'm sure people involved are still alive. Somebody's gotta know something, so it's just so heartbreaking that his friends and his family still don't have the answers that they deserve. So rest in peace to Joseph Kinville III and his father. I hope that one day this family, this community gets the answers to what happened and why. Let me know what you all think, and I am going to end the video here. I will see you Wednesday